Welcome back to the Rock Your Soul podcast. I'm Nicole Eaton, author of the book Rock Your Soul, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Mastering Your Mind and Intuitive Therapist. And I'm here to remind you of your power and that it's absolutely possible to live a life you're obsessed with. Let me show you how. Hey guys, it's Nicole Eaton, author of the book Rock Your Soul, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Mastering Your Mind and Intuitive Therapist, and welcome back to the Rock Your Soul podcast. This week, I got to sit down and chat with founder of the Holistic Divorce Institute, author of The Holistic Divorce, and host of the Next Great Chapter podcast, Olga Nadal. And although Olga specializes in divorce, this episode is really for anyone going through any kind of transition. These tips, tools, inspiration stories are for anybody who's gearing up to make a big decision in your life that will mean true change. Olga talks a lot about growing from what you go through and ways to rewrite how challenging experiences get to work for you. So listen up. You're going to love it. Hi, Olga. I'm so excited to have you on today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Olga and I chatted earlier this week, and I just thought she was so fascinating. And just one of the things that I love is that you have this really great tagline. It's you can go through it or you can grow through it. So what does that mean to you? And where did that emerge from in your life?
It actually, for me, was the most related to divorce. When I was going through my own divorce, I was just like, just let me go through it. I just want to navigate it as quickly as I possibly can. I want to be done with it until I started doing the inner work. I got my own coach. And then I realized, wait a minute, there's potential for growth here. And I'm sure that you're aware with the term of post-traumatic stress disorder, but there is also the post-traumatic stress growth. And it's one of those things. Life is not black and white. Life is whatever you want to make it. So even going through the hardest of situations, you can always try and find the gift, the lesson, the experience that is going to make you wiser, which in my opinion, we talk about wealth, we talk about being successful, but to me, wisdom is the ultimate goal. It's like actually embodying the lesson. So like I said, for me, it began for my divorce, but now I've been applying it to anything. Even 2020, like everybody else, our worlds were turned upside down. And my mantra through the whole thing was, I can go through this and I can grow through it. And that's when I decided to write the book and I launched the Institute. So it's like, to me, it's like my true north, my guiding star. Whenever I feel challenged to go, okay, but how am I going to grow through all of this?
Yeah. What's amazing is I love that you're putting it like this, because even talking about 2020, I think we all had a little PTSD from that, but there can be one of two things that comes from hard times and hard situations. And I think you said that beautifully, that could be growth. What did growth look like for you? And if you don't mind just doing a little bit of your backstory for anybody who hasn't connected with you yet.
Yeah, absolutely. My backstory is I'm originally from Spain, but I moved to Hawaii, to Maui, now 20 years ago. And I went with my then husband at the time, and we just decided to open a restaurant. We wanted to surf and windsurf. And we did for 16 years. We were a fantastic marriage. He was a fantastic partner. We created two incredible humans. We ended up having restaurants in Maui, New York, and life was being really, really good. But I also felt that our marriage was being fulfilled. And in my book, I talk about the FMS, which is the funny term that I came up with to explain that it's called the fulfilled marriage syndrome. And it was for people who were asking, but what happened? You guys were great. Why did you? And I said, yeah, but we had FMS. And it's just that I do believe that relationships, they can be here for a season or for a lifetime. And it doesn't matter which one it is. They both are just as beautiful. When it is time to close that chapter, then you do have to have the courage, the wisdom, the resources to go ahead with it. So I found myself after 16 years of marriage, feeling that very of this marriage needs to be completed. There is something else. There is something bigger. And I kept sort of peeking into my next great chapter and going there is something else. And it can't happen from this marriage. So I wish I could say I was brave and resourceful enough to just say, okay, let's just do this. But it actually took me 3 years of being on what I term the limbo of divorce, which is that moment where you're like, I don't know, should I stay? Should I go? Is this the right decision? You're balancing all the options. And again, it wasn't until I hired my very first life coach. And I wasn't even into that stuff at the time. My divorce It's my introduction to personal growth and development and inner work. But it was through working with my coach that in 12 weeks, I was clear as to what the steps were going to be, whether that was the right decision or not, and how to implement the actions. And that's when I went ahead and I had the most amazing divorce. And then people started asking me, like, how did you do this? Like, how were you able to have such an amicable divorce? We didn't even use lawyers. We arranged everything between us. And that's when I said, well, I'm not sure. I don't know if I have a methodology, but I'm just going to share what I did. So I started an Instagram page that at the time was called Divorce for Love, where I explained that I really believe back then, and now it's been proved, that there is a new paradigm for relationships and that we're not anymore being dictated by the constraint of a marriage is only successful if it lasts until you die. That's not a reality anymore. And I think that there needed to be a space where people could hear that and also hear that a marriage doesn't have to be awful in order to end, that it can just be completed. And then how to actually end it, wrap it in a nice little bow and move on with your life. Because what I did see is that for so many people, divorce is one of the most traumatizing experiences of their life. And it actually makes them way worse than they were before. And that's something that I'm trying my best to save people that suffering and that potential trauma for themselves and their children.
I've never heard somebody say that they had an amazing divorce. Like, that's my first time. I've worked with people for a long time doing therapy, and I don't think I've ever had somebody be like, yeah, this divorce was amazing. So I love that. I think there's a stigma around what it's supposed to be or look like, or that it has to be hard and messy. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do we break that idea and kind of rewrite this story about what that can look like? Because I think that's for a lot of people, especially like a lot of clients I'm thinking of actually just when I just got off the phone with, but like, how do we rewrite this idea of what it has to look like?
So when we were talking last week, we were talking about the reticular activation system and how our brain will just try and find evidence to support whatever beliefs we have. And the truth is that divorces used to be horrendous. The way that divorces were set up is that you needed to find fault in order to exit that marriage. So you couldn't just say, like I'm saying today, listen, we're growing in different directions. We are not in the same page anymore. Can we go separate ways? Back, like not even that long ago, like 50 years ago, you had to find whether there was abuse or adultery, some sort of financial misconduct, in order for you to be allowed to leave the marriage. And also, we lived in a generation where the idea of a woman sort of creating her own financial success, going out on her own, it was almost inconceivable. It was not something that was accessible to the majority of women. So yes, the idea, the presumption from where divorce was born was really high conflict. You always needed a lawyer. You always needed to show up in court. And you ended up in a pretty dire situation, especially for women, unless they were able to manage to get a divorce settlement that worked on their favor. And that wasn't always guaranteed. But what I'm trying to tell the world is that we don't live in that paradigm anymore. Society has changed. Legislation has changed. Now the majority of divorces are no fault. They don't even ask you why. Like you tick in a box that you just, it's called irreconcilable
differences.
That's the one.
Something. I'm picking up what you're dropping. Something along those lines.
I always have a problem with that word, with that combination. But anyway, you just tick the box and that's it. You don't have to prove that nobody has been nasty or anything has gone wrong. And then you can move on with your life. So that's part of the problem, that it was set up in a way that our beliefs were like, this is horrible. And then we just look for that evidence. So then wherever there were movies, the stories of horrible divorces, those are the ones that we hear that kept sort of, they're being amplified by our society and the media. But like I said, we are now in a different paradigm. And now a lot of people are walking away from relationships where nothing has gone terribly wrong, but they have realized that they want more. They have access to more or different. Again, and we were talking the other day, like sometimes we get married at 20 and we're not even fully developed individuals at the time. And we change and we evolve, and our partner may not change and evolve in the same direction at the same speed. And we're realizing now that we live for much longer lifespans. Before, you were married with one person because by the age 50, you were pretty much done. But now we're living 80s, 90s. And you realize that you can actually have more than one important relationship in your life that may turn into a marriage into several ones that actually sort of match your speed of evolution. So that's where I think that it's going to take us a minute, because we need more people like myself and all the others that are having these good divorces to come forth. And that's where I think that social media is doing such a fantastic job, because we are out there. There's so many coaches. You were only at the mercy of your lawyer. And I don't want to label lawyers as anything that they're not. There's all sorts of lawyers. They're fantastic ones, but there are others that they may have a really combative approach, or, they may want to have a much bigger bill at the end or retainer than what is supposed to. But people basically only had access to the legal aid. And now we have a whole breed of divorce coaches that are there to help you handle the emotions of divorce, which I think also really support the let's have a peaceful, amicable divorce.
That's amazing. And I'm really glad that there are people like you modeling this, because I do think that from, like just the experiences with my clients, that comes off as a very lonely experience. Like it can be a very isolating experience to be in this situation where you're making choices about what's next. So I'm thinking about this FMS you were talking about. What kind of advice or steps and how would somebody recognize that they're in that space, and what steps can they take to move in the right direction or in a healthier direction?
Perfect. Well, shameless plug, my book has the 10 steps in order to have a holistic divorce. So if you go to the book, the first step is acceptance. And it's having that, again, if you can do it by yourself, go ahead. But if you need assistance from a coach or a therapist, it's to begin to understand, okay, this is happening. Start beginning to feel your emotions, to really connect with your intuition, know whether this is the right move for you or not. We all have the right answer. It's just inside of us. It's locked sort of under all the layers of conditioning and fears, but you have the answers. So what I would suggest to anyone that is even at the very beginning of, I don't think my relationship is supposed to continue, is to go into the inner work, to start like blocking out all the exterior, ideas of how a marriage should be or how a divorce should be, and start going inside and say, does this relationship work for me? And if it doesn't, and like I said, you will find the answer. You may need to ask a few times, but once you find the answer, then is when you get into the practicality of, okay, how do I have the conversation with my partner? Moment of, hey, pass me the butter, I want a divorce. It's not, it needs to have a strategy behind, and it needs to have what I teach my clients, which is conscious communication, how to make sure that your subconscious intentions are not going to come in and derail the conversation. So how to talk to your partner, how to talk to your friends and family to make sure that they become your allies instead of the people that are going to infuse more fear and doubt into your decision. And then how you talk to your children about it. And from that, the next step will be, okay, so once you're in agreement that this is what's going to go forward, how do you talk to a lawyer? Same thing. It's something that for the first time in many people's lives will be the first time that they actually speak to a lawyer. They don't even know what questions to ask, or when they're giving them all the jargon. I have clients that come to me in tears, go like, I have no idea what they talk to me. They talk about contested, which is true. It's like, we're not supposed to know any of that. So once you get all that legal understanding, and you can begin the legal procedures, I swear, I compare them to buying a house and having to get a mortgage. It's just a ton of uncomfortable paperwork, uncomfortable dealing with emotions, organizing, and then just negotiating with your partner. Like, okay, how are we going to divide the assets? How are we going to establish the custody? And what's going to happen in terms of an alimony or support? The process itself is not complicated, but our emotions and our sort of involvement, very heightened level of fear, is what makes it really, really hard. But in itself, the process, I'm not going to say it's cookie cutter because every situation is very specific, but it's a model that you can just find someone that is going to explain it to you in very simple layman terms. And then it's a matter of you putting the pieces together.
Where can people find your book? Because it sounds like you have it all laid out, like just the ability to have somebody who's been through it, who has some great insight, who can help you with the legal jargon and help you sit with your emotions. Like, I want people to have access to that.
It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon, on Target, on Barnes and Nobles, wherever you want to find it. It's The Holistic Divorce. And the subtitle is A Practical 10-Step Process for Healing. Because like I was saying at the beginning, to me, it's not just about let's go through the process, but there is so much healing so much amazing transformation that can happen through that divorce that I also wanted to include that in there. Like, to me, it was the first time in my life at the tender age of 40 that I learned how to process my emotions. And I remember thinking, like, how have I gone through life without knowing, okay, fear is here, anxiety is here, shame is here. What do we do with it? I was just stuffing them all under the rug. And when you face a life-altering event like divorces, all those emotions are going to come to the surface. And for me, it was a beautiful opportunity to actually learn how to alchemize those emotions from the heaviness of that dragging me down to actually, okay, this is just an energy that needs to go through me. What is the lesson? And then it will actually lift me towards the life that I now have, that to me couldn't have happened with the version of me before my divorce.
You use the word alchemize, which is one of my favorite words when it comes to talking about energy, because I personally believe that energy is kind of what it is until it's transformed. Like you can't get rid of it entirely, but you can create it into something new. And so I think this is just a great conversation, because a lot of people carry that energy because they're not addressing their emotions, and they just kind of carry it through their interactions in their future. And so what is one of your favorite ways, like a tip or trick you could give for people who are starting to create this awareness, knowing that they need to process through their pain and maybe they've been stuffing it down? What is, like, do you have a good practice that people would benefit from to be able to sit with that pain if it's foreign to them?
Yes, I have all the tools in the book because, like I said, I had to go through my own experience, and then working with clients, it gives you a fantastic input into, okay, this is another person's experience. And it's, again, it all comes from our programming. I come from a Spanish culture. I then immigrated to America. My experience is completely different to your experience, but then helping you, assisting you go through it gives me an insight. So then what I created was a way of, I call them the antidotes, is for each person, you just have to recognize the emotion first. So a lot of the work that we do is awareness, a lot of journaling, a lot of meditation, which again, for me, that was like a word of, no, I'm not going to sit on my ass and think about my thoughts. Are you kidding me? That's like a horror in there. Like, no, the process until you start like discerning, like, oh, these are my thoughts. These are somebody else's thoughts. This is programming. And then from that awareness, then it comes the understanding of, oh, today I'm dealing with anxiety. Okay, now we're going to go into feeling it. And for that, there is a lot of somatic practices that I use for each energy. So the energy of anger, for the majority of people, needs to be expressed. We know that. We know the anger outbursts, it's like, I need to get this out of my body. So we work a lot with identifying where in your body is it, in which chakra or energy system did it get stuck? And then what will work for you? Like for some people is, I need to go for a run. For other people is, I need to vent. For other people, like I have a drum. I drum like crazy. It's just like, that's my way of saying, it goes into that skin and it leaves mine, For other people, it may be a dance, like a really high power dance. So that will be like, you'll find the one that works for you. For sadness, like sadness is another very different emotion, but it also can overwhelm you. And sadness is not as expressive in terms of out energy, but it's more like it will just make you collapse. So what do we do to re-energize a person when they're in that feeling of being collapsed? And sometimes it's like, well, maybe you just need that touch. So for a lot of people, it's either you yourself giving you a massage with oils or going to get a massage. Like I get a weekly massage because a lot of energy gets stuck in my fascia, in my tissues. And actually having someone else just move it with oils really, really helped. For some people, I had a client that for her was singing. It was really singing sad songs. That's where she found that her voice will deliver that sadness. So I think it's a fascinating process because, again, we are each unique, beautiful individuals. But when you talk to someone and you have the training behind to see where they can see, you can identify like, oh, this is how you feel that energy. This may be how you need to release it. And then you start finding like, what's the antidote for you? Once they know it, it's almost like having a cabinet. What is the disease? This is the medicine. But again, that's not something that we've been taught. So I think that finding that some form of awareness, whichever way you're going to get there, and then finding the antidote is, in my opinion, the best way to alchemize that energy. And another thing, to not feel at all judgmental and shameful about emotions. That's another thing that our society wanted us and needed us to be little automatons sitting in our school chairs and not show any emotions. And I actually think that the newer generations have it way better understanding of, no, we need to express them and we don't need to be judged by them. So that's another super important step whenever someone is feeling a very strong emotion, to not add more layers to it by being ashamed and judging. And I shouldn't be like this, I should be better. Just flow with them. Like Rumi says, emotions are just guests. Invite them for tea and see what message they have for you.
Oh, that's good. I don't know if I'm like a big Rumi fan. I don't think I've heard that one before. There was so much goodness to unpack here, though, because I think that one of the biggest barriers that I see as a therapist is watching people get really hard on themselves for feeling the way that they're feeling. And I think at the end of the day, you're going to feel it either way. Are you going to add to it? Are you going to, shame your own feelings and judge your own feelings and what they mean about how far along you are in your process and create all this extra work for yourself? Or can we sit with the raw emotion? One of my big things that I love in my work, and I love hearing this is like a universal practice, but where does that energy sit on your body? Where are you holding it? It's really wild when we sit down and just tune into our energetic being and our soul level energy. We can really easily, and even people who are not well versed in this can do this. This is one of the coolest things, is that they can identify where on your body that energy is sitting. And then again, just very in alignment with the things that we preach on Rock Your Soul podcast, is that we have to figure out a way to get it out and get it moving. And I love that you've really broken that down into a variety of different ways that are going to work for different people. So maybe for some people, that meditation and being an observer of your thoughts, or drumming or dancing or singing, like all of these free underutilized things, or even giving like a self massage. Like, I hope everybody who is listening is really hearing this message, because caring for yourself and your energy, whether you're going through a divorce or just any life change, and that's the cool part about the work you do, is this is applicable across all change, and like you can go through it or you can grow through it. And I really love that you're giving real easy tools. I mean, obviously processing emotions can be challenging, but just things that everybody can do no matter where you are with whatever resources you have. This is awesome. I get geeked out about this stuff. This is so exciting.
That's the beauty of it, that once at the beginning it all seems so overwhelming, and so I don't even know where to start. How do I even begin with the awareness? But take little steps, find a guide that can help you. Even books can start putting in the right direction. But then once you start getting the idea, you get so excited about, oh, there is a trigger there and I don't know how to handle it. Okay, what is it going to be? And eventually you'll get to this point, which, by the way, I haven't gotten there, but I know that before I kick the bucket, I will be at that point where your life will have a dashboard in front of you. It'll be like when you're in your car and you have a dashboard and a light comes on and it tells you your tires are too low or your brakes are bad. You will immediately know, oh, this is the problem and this is the solution. It won't be like, suddenly my car is making really strange noises and I don't know, I see things flapping in the back, and be like, I know exactly, I'm aware of where the problem is and what the solution will be. But again, no need to be ashamed, no need of feeling like, oh my God, how come I don't do that? It's something that we haven't been taught. It's so incredibly sad that our children, well, and ourselves, we spend decades in education systems that do not teach us the basics of how does our body work? How does our energy interact with that physical body? How does our mind work? We were talking as well about the mind and the brain. We are in complete darkness about it. So it's just a matter of setting the intention, committing to it, and saying, I am going to become aware of my energy systems and how they affect my life. Because at the end of the day, whether you're a believer or not, the way that you think is going to create your life. Sure, there is a part of co-creation where there will be circumstances that will be thrown at you, but you have such huge degree of control on how you're going to handle those circumstances. So what you were saying before doesn't have to be something big as divorce, but we were mentioning at the beginning of the last week in our podcast, that when I go traveling, I need to come home and take a deep bath, like stay in a bath of Epsom salts for about half an hour, if not an hour. Again, it's not life-changing. It's not like if I don't do it, I'm going to lose my marbles, but it really helps me. It recharges me right away. So it's little things that once you start getting in tune with your body and with your senses, then you'll right away know like, oh, this is what I need. It's almost like, when you start eating really healthy, And then you have a day of junk food. Like we had it with Super Bowl, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? I feel so bad. And then you go back to health. There is like your body knows, and then your body will ask for, can we be healthy? Can we be in balance?
Can we be healthy? Oh, I just like I like those self questions because I think that they're being triggered. And again, even with you talking about the FMS and just that process of like really listening to our body, I really feel strongly that our intuition is guiding us. And even in the areas where we feel overwhelmed or we're not sure, like I think there's always an answer. And I think there's always clarity if we're willing to sit and observe and not judge and allow whatever the answer is to come forth. And one of my favorite things about this experience for you is that you went from this big life change, this ending of a chapter, and you worked through your own stuff. And now you're the founder of the Holistic Divorce Institute and an author where you help women everywhere. And I think one of my favorite parts about hard times or growth or those in between stages is it helps us get clarity on our purpose. Like, I think that like, if you would have stayed in your marriage, would you be who you are? Would you be putting this stuff out into the world? And what would that look like?
And that is such a great point, because I remember when I started working with my life coach, we wouldn't just talk about divorce. We talked a lot about my childhood experiences, and then we talked about the future. And she would ask me like, so what is your dharma? What is your purpose? I was like, I don't know. I have restaurants. I'm successful. I have money, and I have a husband and children. I think that I tick all the boxes. I don't have a white picket fence because I live in Hawaii and that doesn't work here. But besides that, everything else was like ticking the box. But there was no real, like, what is my purpose here? Like anybody could be doing what I was doing. And I remember through the process of working with her, and I remember thinking like, I actually feel really passionate about how I feel that women, we have been given the short stick of many, many things. And being an entrepreneurial woman, I was getting so triggered and so upset with how little respect I will get, especially I'm a very small woman and I had my accent. And I remember I would not be taken seriously by any man that I had to have an interaction, whether we're going to the bank to ask for a loan, whether we were talking to vendors. It was always like I had to have the man behind me in order to be like, oh no, but I was the brains behind the whole operation. I remember feeling like I really want to show people how you can be independent and strong and successful and you don't need a man. And so when I got my divorce, and I was like, I think I'm going to be single for a while and I'm just going to create my financial abundance and then I'll show other women. Funny enough, it turns out I'm a lover, and I love and I can be independent and I can be by myself, but I love having my partner. So I ended up finding my second husband, who is just so aligned with where I am right now. And I said this before and people kind of feel like, oh, you sure you want to say that? I said, yes, my first husband was my soulmate for that version of me. My second husband is my soulmate for this version of me. I don't know if I'm going to evolve into another version that this current soulmate husband can follow me with, or if there'll be another one. But I don't put any stress on that anymore. I just know that my mission is to be really strong and powerful by myself and show other women how to do it. And alone, I have a man that is an incredible superior man that is supporting me, is taking care of me, is nourishing me in the way that now I want women to see, like, okay, you can be independent, you can be strong, and you can also have a man by your side. So to me, sort of my purpose is just evolving to just show women that what we've been told that we're capable of is just a tenth of what we actually can be and do. And that's why everything that I do right now, like whether it's the Holistic Divorce Institute, I'm building a house in Costa Rica where I'm going to be hosting retreats. I still have the house in Maui where I will be bringing people for retreats as well. It's all a demonstration of, I did this and you can do it too. I was an immigrant. I am an immigrant. I came here 20 years ago with nothing. Our first sofa in our house was 2 camping chairs. Like, it was crazy how from that, I'm not at a point where I'm so financially blessed. And I went through a divorce that for many people is like, oh my God, that's it. You are done. And it's true. I had to have all of our abundance. But from that, I 10x what I ended up with. So I just want people to know, that whole 4 mile myth, that Roger Bannister broke the 4 mile record and that nobody had ever done it before. But then when he did it, everybody started breaking the record, and they will go like in less time, in less time, in less time. And that's what I want to do. I want to be like an example for other women of, if she could do this, I can do that and more. And it's my biggest satisfaction. Every woman that I work through that goes through a divorce, that helps her go through it, grow through it, and they become this really successful, powerful woman, it's my celebration, it's my win. To me, that woman being raised up, I feel it like it's myself being raised. So that's where my purpose is now. And again, it came from a divorce. Like, who would have expected that? I thought that I had a successful life, but I wasn't successful in terms of my spirit. And now I feel like that's mission being completed.
I love that you were talking about having different connections at different versions of you. I think that's true for even friendships, and having people who support the version of you, and when sometimes you outgrow them. And so I think this is applicable across, relationships, friendships. I think it's applicable across, even jobs, and people who, force themselves to stay in jobs and it's not the right fit. So I really feel like, you radiate power. I love that. I feel that through the screen, we're zooming right now, but I can feel that energy and that passion that you want to help people live their best life. And because you have a wonderful podcast, The Next Great Chapter, what is your next great chapter? What do you see for yourself? I'm going to flip the tables on you.
Oh, well, I have a million ideas, and they keep on evolving, and I give myself permission for that. So definitely there's going to be the retreats. That's been in my vision board for years. And actually in November 2019, I went with a friend to Bali. I was going to Bali every year. I have a line of clothing there. And I was like, I need to bring women here. This place is just magical. And I was going to do retreats in Maui, Costa Rica, and Bali. And in November 2019, we found the resort, everything. We're going to start offering them on March of 2020. And then we know what happened. Yeah, it was crazy, because there was the Bali retreat was ready to go. I had a bed and breakfast in Maui that I was like, I'm going to bring my women. And then I knew as well that I was going to be doing it in Costa Rica. But everything just went on hold. And it's been with me. It's been this desire to bring women, and especially the ones in Costa Rica. I want to do plant medicine, because that's been a huge part of my evolution and how I've alchemized a lot of my emotions. So I'm super excited about starting to offer those retreats, probably by the end of this year. And then next year to have them as well, going in Maui, Bali, Costa Rica. So that's a huge thing. I want to bring really small, intimate groups of women and commune with Mother Nature, reconnect with ourselves. And I think that we do a lot of healing individually in our society. I think that we do, which is great. Don't get me wrong, therapy, coaching, your journaling, your meditation, that's fantastic. That's the first step. But I think that there's a layer of community that is needed in order to complete that healing and sort of reintegrate back into a society that actually feels welcoming, as opposed to so threatening. And again, my personal experience, but then also the experience of many women, we do feel threatened and not fully safe and seen in our society. So retreats are out there. And then I'm also toying with the idea of public speaking, but that's one that has been a huge mental block for me. I'm all like, yeah, I'll talk to you on a podcast, but you put 20 people in front of me and I start stuttering, I go into Spanish, I have little but I know that it will happen. So I'm just working on my mind, I'm working on my body, seeing where those fears are and releasing them slowly and surely. But yeah, speaking and retreats definitely out there. And the Holistic Divorce Institute is my baby. That one was birthed last year, and we just keep on bringing graduate students that graduate and they become holistic divorce coaches. Because my full-on mission with the Holistic Divorce Institute is that I want to have one holistic divorce coach available per family lawyer. So my dream is that by the end of this decade, nobody will have to do divorce either alone or just with the help of a lawyer. They will all have access to a holistic divorce coach. Because honestly, that was the one transition in my life where I was like, I need help. Everything else, I was a lone wolf. I could figure out by myself. But that one was so much happen. Sort of, I was getting hit from all sides. And I want everybody to have access to that like I had.
I love it. And I'm so excited for you. And just a little thought on the public speaking side is that sometimes we feel the vision of what we're meant to do before we're ready emotionally to do it. And so I think that's a beautiful reminder throughout this whole theme of this podcast, right? Is sometimes we see this for ourselves, or we see things for ourselves prior to the readiness or the preparation. So you can work on your emotions and work on your mind and work on your acceptance. And yes, if you're not connected with Olga on social media, I will drop the links, but where else can they connect with you so that they can get your book, your services? I know you said it's on Amazon and stuff, but where's the best place?
My website is olganadal.com. There I have everything, whether you're looking for coaching, whether you want to become a holistic divorce coach, you want the book, whatever. And when I do the retreats, they'll be there as well. And then my Instagram is olga.nadal.wtih for Holistic Divorce Institute. And yeah, that's where I hang mostly every day. And I just want to say, I love what you said about, I often say that God is a bit of a jokester because he sends me these previews, but then it's like, yeah, coming in 2028, it's like, yeah.
Give me a minute.
It's like, well, just wait. And that's how I felt. The book was in me for years. And then it wasn't until the pandemic. And again, when I was like, how do I want to show up through this? And I was like, well, I got more time in my hands. So now when I'm going to write the book, the retreats were in my mind, and now it's when it's finally all falling into place. So that's something that for people out there thinking like, I'm stuck and I'm not getting to where I want to get, you'll get there. If the vision has been given to you and you hold that vision, which is the part where some of us kind of forget about it. But if you hold that vision, it has to come true. So yeah, I'm excited. It's all going to happen. And I was so happy to talk to you today, Nicole.
Yes, I'm so grateful you came on. And I know that the audience got a ton of good nuggets of information. I hope they connect with you to be further supported in their process. But thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
I'm working on growing this podcast to its full potential this year. If you feel this was valuable, I'd love for you to share or leave me a positive review. Share with somebody who needs to hear it, screenshot and tag me on Instagram, and make sure you keep an eye out for my latest book, Rock Your Comeback, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power. I'm hoping to have it in your hands soon. I'd love to connect with you, so make sure to give me a follow on Instagram or TikTok at NicoleEaton.xo. Thanks for listening to the Rock Your Soul podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on the world. Now go step back into your power. The world's been waiting for you.